On July 12th, we finally saw a day when Valve would give us a semi-major update that isn't either Christmas or Halloween themed. And naturally, everyone got so hyped that we ended up breaking the player count records. We all had fun with it because 1, it's TM Fortress 2, and 2, it's fresh new content. But was the update any good? Do all those maps in big new game mode amount to anything besides a few days of fun? Unlike a lot of past updates, they do. There's a lot more to this update besides the fact they added seals and Saxon Hail to this game. Let's first start with the least significant part of this update, cosmetics. TF2 is known for being a hat game, so naturally they would add a bunch of hats to the game. So how are they? They're mostly good. The only ones I don't really like is the sticky bomb set on Dowman, but everything else is fine. Not much to talk about, since I'm not the guy to have a lot of hats and stuff. However, something I was much more interested in is a new lineup of weapon skins. We were all hoping we would get some better war pace because it's not Halloween or Christmas, and thankfully Valve delivered. Or rather, the community delivered, or something, I don't know. All the skins are good and fit perfectly into art style, with my personal favorite of the bunch being secretly serviced. I really like the combination of black and metal, yet the skin I've been considering to put on one of my weapons. Moving on to the taunts, it's nice to see taunts that are actual taunts. There's one vehicle taunt there for some reason, but I like everything else, with my favorite being the killer joke. But enough about cosmetic pins that are nearly the same as almost everyone else. Let's check out the gameplay changes in terms of maps, starting from the weakest ones to the best. Also, I'm not really going to be covering Pelican Peak because I don't really play Capture the Flag. Sorry. Let's start with the black sheep of this new lineup. The worst map is Venice. What the heck did you expect? It's been said by everyone at this point that this is the worst map, but why is that? First, check these sight lines. We're at a point where people mulling over snipers at an all-time high, and we end up with a map that has some of those ridiculous sightlines in the game. And if you thought this could be circumvented by going through flight routes, guess again. Granted, it does get better throughout the map, but the first point especially is hellish for attackers. Also, there isn't too much height variation in this map, as the main spaces are flat with only flags having high ground. Wait a second. Flat ground, long sightlines, bad flanks, and a feel of a real-world city? This is just an Overwatch map. If most of these things are bad to play in Overwatch, that's going to be even worse when it's ported to TF2. Thankfully, the other maps are much better. So let's go on to the OK maps next. Recorder is truly one of the 5CP maps of all time. It's a map that feels like the usual competitive 5CP maps like Sunshine, Process, and Metalworks. The only remarkable part of this map is the Japanese theming, but even then, there's another map that does it. It's a solid map, but nothing else besides that. Hardwood is a nice attack-defend map that has a great look and overall just plays very well compared to other attack-defend maps, but that's not really a high standard. I'd compare it to Altitude, if the second point was easier to push. The last point does feel a bit too claustrophobic, though. Couchworks is a payload map with this unique feeling of being incredibly cramped. I've seen people compare it to Swiftwater, but that comparison completely ignores how open Swiftwater is and how narrow this map can feel. Another map that makes this map stand out is the elevation. If I had to compare it to another FPS map, it would be Narrows from Halo 3, with the emphasis on verticality and flanks rather than big spaces. It can feel hard to get through, but it's a solid experience. Continue with payload maps, we now have Phoenix. It's a beautiful map that still manages to be decent to play. A lot of people were given the impression that this is going to be another Overwatch type map, but thankfully that's not the case. There's a lot of twisting paths and high ground to make this map feel great to play on. However, the last point is a war crime, and that cannot go unnoticed. And to close out the alright maps, we have Rotunda. Easily the best part of the map is once again, how it looks. I just really like the train yard look with the snow, really driving the point that this update doesn't really have a real theme. The map is similar in structure to Nucleus, where there's a big area around the point, except this time the saturated snipers aren't that obnoxious. However, there's one probably half the map and nobody's really talking about it. The colors for the red team and blue team sides can be a bit mixed up sometimes, and finding out where people are spawning from is finicky. It just hinders the map flow and makes the map confusing to find where the combat is. However, from the bad maps to the OK maps, we also have 3 baller maps. To start, let's look at the superior King of the Hill map in this update. Shark Bay is easily the fan favorite update besides the other one I'll get to shortly. It's not hard to see why. It's a great King of the Hill map that isn't too linear but isn't too open like Nucleus or the previously mentioned Rotunda. There's also a hazard that's unique to the map with the water with the sharks. Yes, I know Mercenary Park technically has it too, but that doesn't count. It's for 1 point and it's basically significant. Plus, it's alligators instead of sharks. Another cool detail on the map is that there are signs that count how many people die from shark attacks, which updates in real time. The map has a good amount of levels of verticality and traversal, and overall, it's a very well made map. Moving on, let's look at Sulfur. Sulfur is easily the map I was most excited to see when I saw the patch notes, as I knew it was like Steel, my favorite attack defend map in the game. And Sulfur does not disappoint. It has 4 points in multiple ways across the map, and like Steel, you can capture the last point whenever you want. But unlike Steel, it takes shorter to capture, is accessible by all 9 classes, and capturing it isn't an instant game win, because the game doesn't end with you capturing all points, but rather keeping last for long enough. There's now a secondary time that goes along with the attacker's timeline that activates when the last point is captured, and capturing the other 3 points chronologically decreases the time you need to keep the last captured, so you can either hold the point or use your pause time to further your offense. Cool gameplay gimmick. Is the map layout good? Yes! Each point is very distinct with varied geometry and fair sightlines for the most part, and it keeps the interconnected design that Steel had, while still not being nearly as claustrophobic. Honestly, this might be a new favorite attack defend map. As a cherry on top, the map looks beautiful. But the real highlight in terms of the new maps is Selbian, a new player destruction map. It's like Cursed Cove, but a lot of the fat is trimmed off, and that's already an absolute blast of a map to play on. But easily the best feature of the map is the seal, and it's not because it's cute. The real reason I love this guy is because the chaotic firefights that ensue. In every player destruction map, the main point where you deposit your items is either a place that's not really easily accessible, or a completely different dimension. In Selbian, however, the seal travels across the map down the middle with everyone free to give him food, causing massive battles with both teams rallying by the top scorer. The only complaint I have with this map is the sightlines, but if it doesn't ruin bad or upward, Selbian easily gets a pass. And that's it for the main maps, as the next maps aren't really for an existing game mode, but rather an entirely new one added to this update. It's time we talk about versus Saxton Hale. Versus Saxton Hale takes the existing TF2 gameplay and turns it on its head by making the game a battle of everyone else on the server versus one guy. Unfortunately for the 23 other players on the server, it's Saxton Hale, the former CEO of Manco, is an absolute unit. His health is incredibly high, his melee does 195 damage unless you're a medic for some reason, and he has multiple tools to get to you quickly and end you. Playing as Saxton Hale is easily the highlight of this new mode, as you'll be facing a massive team while still having the tools to deal with them. His melee does 195 damage on default, but every 30 seconds or so, you get a stronger punch that basically kills anything that isn't uber-charged or protected by a shield. You also have a charge button that sends enemy flying and tears through any building in your way, and a stun that causes massive shockwaves that serves as a sentry nest clearing device. Overall, it's a great time when you finally get to play as him. However, this is expected, as everyone loves playing as the overpowered character. How does it feel to fight against Saxton? Turns out, it's still fun. Each class has their own strengths and weaknesses and serves a purpose in fighting Saxton Hale. There are also some changes to the weapons and balance to even the playing field. Everyone can now wall climb by hitting a surface with a melee weapon, allowing you to get to some stupid places. Every melee outside the Holiday Punch, Margaret Garner, and the Spy's Knives now always crit, with the Margaret Garner and Backstab doing insane damage with their usual crit condition. The only things that are unbalanced to me are Demoman with explosives is too weak, and Mech is absolutely overpowered, where it's not rare to see a medic duel Saxton Hale with the Uber Saw. And as a cherry on top, due to everyone in the server being able to voice chat with each other, lobbies often have some weird conversation going on, usually involving Five Nights at Freddy's. As for the maps, while Nucleus and Tiny Rock are serviceable, Skirmish and Distillery are easily the best maps for this game mode, with enough high ground and space for a proper battle. However, this game was not playable on release, which we must address. This also leads to some more disappointing aspects of this update. It's very clear the maps aren't really playtested on release. Some maps didn't have too many issues on launch, but I could tell the polish was not there when I walked to the third point on Phoenix and saw glitched windows. Vest also had noticeable visual bugs, but Cashworks was completely broken, as the offenders could go into Blue's spawn. And Saxon Hale was broken on launch, which was a massive disappointment as this was the biggest and most exciting part of the update. What makes this even worse when it was added back, it was broken again and had to be taken out for a bit to finally fix it once and for all. Not really though, as there still are broken starts and exploits. I really wish they start playtesting more and focusing on polish, as this has been happening in nearly every update now. They eventually fixed nearly everything I've talked about, but prefer it to be already fixed on release. Speaking of fixes, community fixes were one of the most hyped features of the summer update, as they had the potential to bug fix on a level the main team couldn't before. There were also some quality of life additions, like a toggle to turn off hats. The ability for the community to start fixing the game's rough edges themselves looked to be a massive boon. However, there's one problem. We didn't get any of them. Okay, we got one, but it was after the update, and we're still promised to get community fixes. Granted, Valve seems to be saying this is more of a test bed for the future of TF2, but I'd still like more than just a teleport or particle fix, as nice as that was. But besides the bugs and disappointments, I'd still say that this was a good update. In fact, I really like the precedent this new update could potentially set for the future of TF2. People like to see this update as minor, but honestly, 14 maps in a new game mode is huge for modern standards. When you look at updates of other games, you only get 3 or 4 maps per year, and TF2 just gave us 14 in a single update, making Overwatch's content output look pathetic by comparison. I know people want more weapons, and I also kinda do. It's very exciting content, but there's too many things that get in the way of this. The first is that TF2 already has mountains of weapons, hence why we don't really get that many more. The second thing to consider is stability. When you add new weapons to the game, that affects the balance and you might completely break the game. However, when you add new maps, if that map isn't good, just don't play on it. The worst you get from a map pack is disappointment, but the worst you get from a weapon update is an obnoxious meta. The only thing I really ask for, besides actually implementing community fixes, is slight change of how competitive works. Because if you hate tryhards, it would probably be great for you if they just went into a mode where you're not going to touch. Also, increase the KO's damage by 10, and then we're on good terms. Like, please let me terrorize snipers. I just generally believe that all TF2 needs from now is further polish to be the best possible experience it could be. But that's enough hypotheticals. What's my final verdict on this holiday-sized update, as they call it? Aside from a few hiccups, I feel this update was very good for the game. There's a reason the game reached its highest player count ever, as people still really like TF2 and probably play it full time if it had the consistent updates that are expected with modern multiplayer games. The addition of 14 new maps is great, and we got a decent cosmetic lineup to boot. Let's just hope Valve learns their lesson and playtests next update. We got this many players for a broken update. Imagine what would happen if the update was polished on release. Thanks for watching, tell me what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.